Lauren, who's going to interpolate it?
Ping.
Senator Ping Lacson, Mr. President.
All right. The distinguished lady from Antique, the godmother of Luntian, Pilipinas, is recognized. And the
Mother of Antique, although she's not Antique.
former chief of police is recognized, Senator Ping Lacson.
This won't take long. Thank you, Mr. President. This won't take long since Senator Coco has taken up at least three main topics included in my interpellation, Mr. President. And thank you, Senator Pimentel, for that. I'd like to tackle the ALGU, Mr. President, if I may, just to wrap up the issue on insertions and lump sums. First, I'd like to quote again the ruling on, a portion of the ruling on Bellica versus Executive Secretary pertaining to presidential pork barrel, a kind of lump sum discretionary fund which allows the President to determine the manner of its utilization. This refers only to the Malampaya funds and the Presidential Social Fund, Mr. President. However, be that as it may, we may be violating the same Supreme Court ruling if a similar utilization of funds is applied to another project, another type of project. Now, ALGU, under the NEP, page 581, the amount is 7 billion pesos, Mr. President. However, under House Bill number 8169, or the GAB, volume 1-B, page 581, it ballooned to 16 billion 80 million 98,000 pesos. But in the Senate, meron din po nagdagdang 102 million pesos. No? I won't belabor anymore, but the basic question and the policy question should be, first, where is this lodge, Mr. President? Mom. Madam Sponsor, may tanong po ako.
I'm trying to reconcile
No, where is this lodge first?
ALGU.
ALGU.
Where is lodged? Wait, we have different figures. I'm trying to look at the
No,
figures.
not the figures yet. My question first is, saan ba ito naka-lodge? Anong department, anong agency ng gobyerno?
Not under the LGU. It's a special, what is it? A special, it's DBM. Only the monitoring and evaluation. Yes.
Because the second question
It's,
is
let
related.
me answer, Mr. President. It's a Department of Budget and Management, but
Okay.
the monitoring and implementation
So it is under the budget of the Department of Budget and Management.
Yes, but
Okay.
the strict
My-
monitoring and implementation
Yeah,
is a
I
DILG.
understand. My second question is, or follow-up question is,
Pati ba yung figures niya?
was DBM consulted when in the House it was increased to 16 billion 80 million 98,000 pesos?
Can
Was there
we
consultation?
reconcile our figures? Because my
My
figures are
reference is
different.
the budget books.
Ba't wala? Ba't sa atin iba?
Local government support fund.
That's different. This is ALGU.
No, ALGU has, 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session is resumed.
Just to clarify, Mr. President, allocation to local government, ALGU, is comprised of many items, including the MMDA, the special shares of local government units in the proceeds of national taxes, the Barangay Officials Death Benefits Fund, the Local Government Support Fund, the LGSF, and the special shares of local government units in the proceeds of fire code fees. I believe that a good senator from Cavite, my vice chair, is referring to the LGSF, and under the LGSF, we have the assistance to municipalities, the assistance to cities, the conditional matching grant to provinces for road and bridge repair, the provision for potable water or salintubig, and other financial assistance to local government units.
Yes, I'm particularly referring to other financial assistance to LGUs.
Okay, so
That's
we're on the same page now.
paragraph 5, yeah.
Yes, Mr. President. So the other assistance to LGUs is part of the LGSF,
Yes.
which is part of the ALGU.
ALGU, yes.
Okay, very clear, Mr. President.
So under net, 7 billion po ito. Under the House version, naging 16 billion. So nag-increase siya ng how much? 9 billion pesos. Ang unang tanong ko, nakonsulta po ba yung ahensya, which is the DBM, when this ballooned, the amount 7 billion ballooned to 16 billion? Naikonsulta po ba ito sa DBM? Dahil DBM ka mo nakalad.
I don't think so, Mr. President.
Okay.
Because from the NEP to the increase in the GAB, I don't think Secretary Jokno was consulted
So again,
on the increases.
Mr. President, distinguished sponsor, would it not constitute grave abuse of discretion? Kasi naging,
Yeah. 7B to 16B
Yeah.
or 9B.
if DBM was not
Yes.
consulted, who will implement?
line item of the 9?
So again, the legislators will be implementing.
Original na, the 7, may line. There's a menu. Local governments can request. Bawal yun. Bawal. Local governments, yes. Mr. President, in the practice of this fund under the LGSF, under the ALGU, the local governments, those perhaps that were byproducts of the consultations with the LDCs to the RDCs that were not part and parcel of the NEP can actually request to the DBM to be funded under this assistance to municipalities. But the augmentation of 9 was not consulted with the DBM, per DBM.
Di pareho rin yung problema, Mr. President. Hindi na-consult yung agency. So who will implement this? And how would DBM monitor something that they didn't know in the first place?
We have a circular po,
Oo.
and then there's a documentary report.
How this
Yes.
was,
Yes, Mr. President.
Barangay.
To be sure, this is not a lump sum where there's arbitrary or...
I will disagree with your
May I just...
statement. Anyway,
it's-
Mr.
it's-
Please go
Actually,
ahead.
no, let me just put on record because madugo ang kanilang requirements po. Number 1, only LGUs may request. No lawmaker may request. Number 2, their project menu is here. And the documentary requirements is tedious and bloody. Certification under oath from the LCE attesting that there is a sanggunian resolution endorsing the proposed project, that the same part of the duly approved local development investment program and annual investment program of the LGU, identification of the recipient government hospital and rural health center signed by the LCE and local health officer if this is falling under the indigent patients menu. Ambulance, certification under oath from the LCE attesting that there is a Sangguniang resolution, again, with a local development investment program, etc. And a project proposal, profile signed by the LCE and the local health officer, including the vehicle specifications, the deployment, the use, the cost, etc. Ambulance pa lang po yan. Assistance to indigent individuals, medical, burial, transport, food assistance, cash for work, educational assistance. Certification again with Sangguniang resolution, local development plan, and project profile, type of assistance, period of implementation, implementation process. This is where the DILG comes in for the strict monitoring and implementation only of LGUs, not of lawmakers. They are barred from requesting for this because, as it aptly says, it is a financial assistance to local government units. And just like we discussed yesterday, this must be vetted or requested from the LDC level, Mr. President. I think these are the needs which are not necessarily infrastructure in nature, but the needs of the indigent peoples in the rural communities,
Thank you, Mr.
but
President.
not lawmakers.
What you mentioned is the menu, but where are the items? If there are no items, then it follows that this is a lump sum appropriation. And worse, from 7 billion, which I suppose DBM or whatever agency was in charge of preparing, pinag-aralan nila ito. Pero pagdating sa lower house, dinagdagan ng 9 billion without even consulting the agency or agencies concerned. So how would that be implemented kung walang consultation with the executive? This is a back and forth discussion, Mr. President.
Yes.
I don't mind if we amend, we realign, as long as we consult, or it is upon the request of the agency or the agencies concerned. I will have no problem with that. I will have a problem if it's discretionary and arbitrary on the part of the legislators.
Mr. President, I am informed that it is not for legislators, it is for local government units, including purchase of mini dump trucks, fire trucks,
Multi-cab.
multi-cabs. Yes, Mr. President, and the repair of public markets and slaughterhouses. It's not the BUB, but it's similar, because this ALGU was instituted during the Aquino administration, is that correct? It was expanded during the Aquino administration and continued under the present administration. It's similar to the BUB because these are the bottoms-up needs of the grassroots communities, not for legislators to identify post-enactment, but for LGUs to request their small needs which may not be part of the NEP, na hindi po na-adopt, perhaps no RDC.
Well, it's just like saying that the farm-to-market roads are not for the legislator concerned because DA will implement. But DA was never consulted when the 500 million pesos worth of 69 farm-to-market roads in one district was, inputted in the House version of the budget bill. It's just that, pareho rin yun. In this case, by Secretary Jokno's own admission, walang consultation. So at the proper time, I may introduce an amendment to just refer back to the 7 billion because I assume that meron pag-aaral na ginawa doon sa 7 billion because it's in the NEP. But for the House to increase it to 9 billion pesos,
Wala. The increase from NEP to GAB was not based on consultation with DBM at least. Whether there was consultation with local governments, that would be for the House to say. Malay mo kinonsulta nila. Bait ko sa congressman.
sana man lang may listahan tayo. Ano ba yung mga disadvantaged municipalities or barangays or provinces na mabibayayaan ito, baka hindi na rin ako kikibo. But there's none, Mr. President. It's just a menu. So this is arbitrary, this is discretionary.
Mr.
Pagdating niyan sa congressman,
disadvantaged municipality.
papagawa lang sila ng resolution, pamimigay na nila yan.
Assistance to municipalities, assistance to cities, and ano. May, ito
Yes.
may line item, may formula.
Oo. Mr. President, under the LGSF, there's the assistance to municipalities and assistance to cities, and clearly the assistance to municipalities is much bigger than the assistance to cities. So there's really a bias in favor of the underserved or the LGUs that need assistance more.
Meron. Iba assistance.
Mag-return ko na lang kamo.
Meron na pala. Iba, meron.
Ito, Mr. President. There's a list of the assistance to municipalities for 2019 per town. Ito ho, ang kapal-kapal. Meron na, it's not a lump sum. It's actually, it's an annex here of every municipality
For the 16 billion, Your Honor.
for the 7.
For the 7, no problem. Pinag-aralan nila yan eh. But for the 16,
Masbate, Catanduanes, Sorsogon, Aklan, bakit walang Antique? Teka.
Meron ma'am, hindi ma'am. Assistance to municipalities.
baka nandun sa 16 billion, Madam.
Hindi,
Yung
kung
Antique.
papayag kayo po, tulungan na nyo talaga. Yung tatanggalin mo sa house, ilagay mo malaki doon. Tulungan doon. Pakita kita kung gano'ng kahirap ang tao. Maaawa ka, maglalagay ka doon ng malaking amendment. Oh, sige. Nakita ko tuloy. Ayan, maganda yan.
Is for the further discussion, Mr. President.
Bakit walang Antique? Nakalimutan na namin. Aklan lang. Wala. Ano ba yung assistance in municipalities under LGSN? Yes. Pero yung tinatanong niya,
Let's move on, Mr. President. Let's leave this in the meantime. No, we'll proceed now to the 2019 budget itself, the historical data of appropriations and obligations. Yes. Ang source po natin dito yung SAOB, Statement of Appropriations, Allotments, Disbursements, and Balances. As of the end of quarter 3, 2018. Labang malaki-laking ano nito. Anyway, let's start with 2016 anyway, Mr. President. Total available appropriations 3.2 and then total obligations. Unused appropriations in 2016 was at 596 billion pesos. 2017, 388. 2018, as of end of third quarter, 1.4 trillion pesos. Kindly comment on this. Because in your sponsorship speech, meron pang portion doon na na-exceed yung underspending by 34 billion pesos. No? I remember that. But if you see the chart as shown, ang unobligated balances dito, 1.2 trillion as of third quarter. Unreleased appropriations, 256 billion. Unused appropriations, 1.4.
Mr. President, you're referring to my speech where I mentioned how much was the amount, 34 billion.
Exceeded
Yes,
underspending by 34.
because that referred, and if you recall my speech, to the cash disbursement, Mr. President. So, in short, yun na po ang kanilang nabayaran, nalaan pong pondo sa ilalim po ng cash disbursement. But under the appropriation, the figure is
The total available appropriations, 3.7.
as of December.
I know, ma'am. Yung 2018, ang total unobligated balance nila is ito.
There's a total, tama ba ito?
Unused
Of
appropriation.
the third quarter in 2018, there's a total unobligated balance of
1.2.
1.4.
1.214 Yes.
Itong statement, the statement.
The statement in the speech, Mr. President, was referring to the disbursement. The statement that we've exceeded the spending program, that's why I use the word spending, refers to disbursement. That means payment of obligations entered into by the government, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. President, we are referring to different base numbers. Anyway,
Hindi,
ang
iklaro ko
tanong
lang
na
po.
lang po is why is that? Why is there such a big unobligated balance?
Hindi po,
of 1.2?
ganito po.
Yeah. Sige.
Para po maliwanag.
Okay, explain lang po.
Okay. I'll simplify. Appropriations, as we know, is different from disbursements. You know that very well.
Yes, yes.
Appropriations refers to the authority to enter into obligation
Yes.
granted by Congress, while disbursement refers to payment of obligations and disbursements program as prepared or determined by the executive. So for the past years, the NG's fiscal position has been in deficit. So naturally po, iba ang figure ng appropriation sa disbursement.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned in my speech that they've exceeded 34 billion, that's disbursement. But the appropriation is different. The
Miss-
total unobligated balance is 1.2, as shown in your slide.
But shouldn't we be using total appropriations or the appropriations as reference for efficiency? Because we appropriated this amount to the national government, and then ang nagagamit lamang certain portion of that appropriations. So doon natin dapat i-base yung unused appropriations consisting of unreleased and unobligated. Diba? Para makita natin yung efficiency, as pointed out by the minority leader yesterday, for purposes of planning, for the future national budget,
Yeah.
makikita natin
Yes.
how much are we supposed to appropriate based on the efficiency of
Yes.
the agencies
Mr.
concerned.
President, that's the reason why we are transitioning to a cash-based 2019 budget. Because it's an obligation-based budget, there are payments that have to be made of the 2017 payments of this year. Hindi po magulo. Hindi yung tugmang 12 months na appropriation, na obligation, na disbursement. Maliwanag, pag cash-based, 12 months, ito ang appropriated, ito rin ang linaan, in-implement at babayaran. Kaya nga, iba-iba po yung figures because the 2018 appropriation is different from the unobligated balances and the payments made. Some of the payments made are from 2017. I was informed yesterday that some payments made are way back to 2015. 16, 17. That's why our figures will never be the same because it's an obligation-based budget. We are not limiting the appropriation to the disbursement and the programs implemented to be paid. That is the reason why the DBM now has been advocating for a cash-based budget so that it's also clear for legislators. We gave you this, you spend this, you implement this, otherwise you get fired. I know, you return to Treasury. Yeah. Anyway, so ganun.
Since you mentioned the cost-based budgeting, Mr. President, out of curiosity, may tanong lang po ako. Magka-cost-based tayo next year. Then why are we passing a joint resolution extending the authority to spend yung 2018 hanggang December 2019? Di ba magka-kontra yun?
Yes. Mr. President,
At least MOE and capital outlay.
yes, yes. Mr. President, because we are transitioning and the agencies, perhaps, wag naman magalit yung mga ahensya, may not be wholly disciplined yet to finish or to expedite the effective implementation, obligation, payment, disbursement of their budgets. And so it would be beneficial to the poor if there are remaining funds that cannot be spent for December 2018, that we allow its implementation till December on 2019. Huling hirit na, ha? Okay, pero next year, disiplina kayo, 12 months lang, ubusin nyo, may programa kayo, may nangangailangan, patupad ninyo, bayaran nyo, ganun.
In other words,
Transitioning po eh.
in other words, Mr. President, we're trying to render ineffective yung cash-based budgeting.
Hindi naman po.
I did not sign that resolution, by the way, Mr. President, for that reason. I don't want to be inconsistent.
Okay, hindi naman po. Because we are extending the life of an obligation-based budget, Mr. President. We're not extending the life of a cash-based budget yet. If we extend the 2019 cash-based budget, the life of which is only 12 months to 24 months, then we are being contradictory. But that will be for the next Chair of Finance. I will not stand here next year. Okay.
Okay, let's leave it at that, Mr. President. It's just an observation.
I'll just give an example, okay? With all due respect to the agency, DSWD, that has had maybe 4 heads. I asked them, Kalahi seeds. I said, I know that there's Kalahi seeds, etc., etc. To make a long story short, it's already December. They did not realize that there was an allocation of, let's say, 50 million for Region 6. I said, you know, so many people are asking for footbridges, for this and that. It's still in the central office. They did not even realize that there was an allocation and they will only do the ocular of the Kalahi areas now in December. Imagine if we don't extend the funds, sayang naman po na babalik sa treasury yung para sa Kalahi seeds na areas na hindi nila alam nandun may pondo. You'd be surprised. Another one, let's say, DFA. I go to a jurisdiction, let's say a consulate, a foreign consulate. I tell them, you know, we amended it, and we gave you extra MOE because you cover these countries and you're only 1 or 2 persons here, etc. They say, no, we don't know. They go home to Manila. They ask their admin and finance. They said, wala, wala. I have to ask LBRMO and my office to coordinate with the agency, to coordinate with the foreign post. It takes them 3 to 6 months to find that there is money, and then that's when they spend it. That is the same problem with AHA yesterday, with HFEP that we discussed yesterday, and many others. DOT was another problem. Some time ago, I went to a post and I said, you know, because I appreciate the work you do, I actually have an amendment of just a few millions for your MOE so you can promote tourism, etc. for this. They said, no ma'am, we checked with admin and finance, there's none. The officer had to go home and consult. Wala pa rin daw. Finally, inamin na meron. Dun pa lang itatransmit ang funds. So, Mr. President, ganun po minsan ang nangyayari. Wag naman magalit ang executive. So, kaya po nag-extend ng 12 months next year para pagbigyan sila. Pero next year, cash-based na. Nasanay kasi ng multi-year, 2, 3, 4 years, obligate. Kakulangan po ng disiplina, kaya ang bagal-bagal. Kaya nagtataka po ang mga taong bayan at mahihirap. Ang gaganda na sinasabi ng mga senador. Nararamdaman ba nila? Minsan hindi. Kasi yung ahensya, mabagal mag-download, mabagal mag-implement bago makarating at maramdaman ng mahihirap.
Tapos na po. Since you refuse to let go, tatanong lang tungkol doon, what is the opinion of the DBM Secretary on the joint resolution that we passed on third reading? Yung joint resolution extending the lifespan of the 2018 MOE and capital outlay under the 2018 budget up to December 31, 2019.
Mr. President, this is a congressional initiative to pass the joint resolution. And because we're politicians, we are in touch with the grassroots, with the provinces, the barangays, and we see how projects are not implemented. And therefore, and we also see that there could be unobligated balances na nakakahinayang naman pong hindi gamitin. And so, DBM understands the position, agrees with it, and in fact, is optimistic that next year we will have a cash-based budget if you help me pass especially the BRB.
Yeah, so DBM is agreeable.
Yes.
Okay, moving on, Mr. President, national debt. Ayan, yan po yung utang ng bawat Pilipino.
Kagalit sa akin.
As of October 2018, 70,974 per Filipino. Very quickly, do sa unused appropriations ng different departments. Let's just go through with this. Ito po yung honor roll.
Can I have a copy of that? What is this?
For example, why would DOTR have an obligation rate of just 38%? What are we going to do about this, Mr. President?
What is this?
What projects have suffered or are suffering
copy of that.
on account of
I cannot
this
see.
very low obligation rate of DOTR? DSWD, October 2018, end of third quarter. DSWD, 58%. DILG, 64. DND, 48.
I'll have to answer you when the DOTR budget comes to the floor, Mr. President, but I recall, because I've been defending that budget for the past several years, that's a perennial problem, and I'm sure they will say that they will obligate up to 80 or 90% till end of December. I don't know if it's Filipino mentality na last minute, nagmamadali, or dahil po mahirap yung mga right-of-way issues on some big-ticket projects for infrastructure, or permitting with LGUs, or all of the above. I share your frustration, Mr. President, whether it's NHA, or HFEP of DOH, or DOTR, even in the previous administration.
Anyway, Mr.
During
President, I don't want
hearings,
to
we will talk
deny
about their low obligation rate.
our other colleagues from Interpellate their
So if
time.
you want to cut your budget and put it in your advocacies on those that will go, I will be happy to do that, because I don't want to see wastage.
Yeah. Moving on, Mr. President, macroeconomic indicators.
Ito God.
Real GDP growth. Eto, ang tanong ko, kailan tayo makakachamba na on target? Well, 2017, medyo on target tayo, no? 6.575. Ang actual 6.7. But look at the others.
Okay.
And why is this, Mr. President? What accounts for
Can I have the
wrong
break-
projections,
breakdown
even
of the
far
growth
off
per sector? Do you have it?
from the actual?
I think it's
I just want to be educated, Mr. President.
agriculture. I don't have the figures and they're getting it, but top of my mind, it's clearly agriculture that brings down our growth.
So why?
I am
Mr. President?
certain. Negative.
No.
All sectors, in fact, even the services sector, it's top of mind, I know it. It's agriculture that's bringing down our growth.
Ang tanong ko, Mr. President, bakit yung projection natin laging mali doon sa actual? Ang layo?
No, 2017 is in between the projected
Yeah, that is
GDP
correct.
growth. And 2016 was not their administration, it was the previous government, Mr.
I would just like to
President.
be enlightened. Bakit
And then
laging-
2015 is the Aquino administration still. So they can only answer, Mr. President, for 2017, which is within the projected GDP growth.
No, I'm not particularly pertaining to an administration. This is a phenomenon that
Mali
we
ang-
should devote some time to study why.
It's not accurate.
Yeah.
What
Bakit
could be the
laging
reasons why it's-
malayo?
Mr. President, these are not projections, they're actually targets. And yes, I agree with you. When we target, we must make it realistic targets so that we don't fall short of our targets. So that when you
For
face
purposes of
Congress.
planning, yeah.
Yes, for purposes of planning. The NEDA says that these are targets, not projections. Why do we fall short of target? Because of if the factors beyond our control, such as the rise in prices of crude oil globally, then we should perhaps taper our targets. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. President, fast track na tayo, move forward. Doon tayo sa general provision. Compare lang natin yung NEP, GAB, and the Senate Committee report or Senate version. Especially dun sa validity period, NEP. After the end of validity period, any unreleased appropriations as well as unexpended or undisbursed funds shall revert to the unappropriated surplus of the general fund in accordance, etc., etc. This is fine, no? Tama lang. Under GAB, any unreleased as well as undisbursed funds at the end of the extended payment period shall revert fine. But in the Senate version or under our committee report, ang nakalagay dito, any unreleased and unobligated appropriations at the end of the fiscal year shall revert to the unappropriated surplus of the general fund. This is our version, but I'll be critical somewhat, Mr. President. Ang ibig sabihin nito, kailangan unreleased and unobligated. So, maski na-release, hindi na-obligate, hindi ito babalik sa general fund. That's the implication. Hindi, and ang ginamit po ninyo any unreleased and unobligated. So I would suggest that we use or we adopt the House version in this regard, Mr. President, just to serve the purpose. Alisin na natin yung end. Kasi dalawa requirements Gamitin na lang natin yung House version para mas dalawa requirements unreleased and unobligated. So maski na-release, hindi na-obligate,
No.
hindi babalik.
No, the intention is the same. A comma makes a lot of a difference.
Okay. So
No,
anyway, as long
any-
as
yung hindi po na-release at hindi na-obligate, dalawa.
we understand each other.
Yes.
No, why ko? Ba't kailangan ko kami M naman? Hindi ko understand yun. No, unreleased and unobligated.
Sige na po, Mr. President, para hindi kayo masyado mapagod, I'll terminate my interpellation on general principles. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
So, ano muna? Kaya. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, next lined up to interpolate the general principles is the Honorable Senator Risa Hontiveros. May we recognize her, Mr. President?
Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
After her, we can take a break after Risa, and then we come back after lunch. Sige, you have a break. After this, we can take up smaller agencies.
No, Lisa and then Frank, tapos na ang general principles.
Yeah. Ralph, tapos na, di ba?
Individual agencies, wag na kasi meron na rin ang para kasama sa yeah, hindi ka naman yun
Yeah.
Kasi budget naman nila maliit.
So kanya, para tapos na. Ito, Frank, after Frank. After? Okay. I won't tell her right now because she'll be upset. All right? Yeah. No problem. All right, ready? So, Mr. President, may we recognize once again Senator Risa Hontiveros to interpolate and Senator Legarda to sponsor.
Yes, please proceed.
Salamat, Mr. President. Mr. President, gusto kong i-follow up yung at least dalawang issue na lumabas na sa interpellation sa general principles. So far, una yung ano yung papel ng mga regional development councils sa pagtukoy at pag-aproba sa mga proyekto na binanggit ni Senator Ping, at saka yung usapin din ng implementation readiness ng mga proyekto na binanggit naman ni Senator Coco. Tapos iuugnay ko itong dalawa, at kung pagbibigyan ako ni Madam Sponsor, ibabundle ko na doon yung iba pang mga tanong doon sa tatlong ahensya, yung DOF, yung NEDA, at saka yung DBM. So, una po, Mr. President, tungkol sa RDC endorsed projects inventory as the long list of projects for GAB lump sums. I'm leading Madam Sponsor towards, with your indulgence, introducing an item in the general provisions. So, unang-una po, Mr. President, salamat sa inventory ng RDC endorsed projects na pinadala sa line agencies during the preparation of the President's budget proposal. Yung ating Senate Finance Committee has a copy of these. I understand, Mr. President, na yung iba dito tinanggap ng line agencies, inendorso sa DBM, pero an overwhelming number daw were not. Is that correct, Madam Sponsor?
Yes, yes.